Okay, a very good morning or good afternoon to you, wherever you are dialing in from and whatever time it is for you. My name is Adam Hamadash. I have the absolute pleasure to talk you through the my keynote from the Independent Hotel Show in Amsterdam last month, how to make your hotel stand out in AI search. I'm just going to move my screens around so I'm not quite as big. How do we do this? There we go. That should have done it. So on every single slide, you will see a QR code. If you like what you're seeing or you want to go deeper on these slides, feel free to use that QR code. That will give you access to the slides. And there is also a sort of a cheat sheet at the end as well. So we've sort of broken everything that we're going to be covering today into a sort of handy cheat sheet that you can sort of take away rather than a really big slide deck. So either or, use that QR code. So let's get straight into it. For those that don't know me, I'm Adam Hamadash. I'm the CEO and founder of Formula. We're a digital growth agency specifically for the hotel sector. And today I'm going to be talking about 6 things. The first is your customers are finding you in very, very different ways. And that is really the result of AI search, but also some of the big changes that Google is making too with traditional search. I'm going to talk about the last 90 days, what has happened in the last 3 months that, again, is impacting you, some in positive, some in not so positive ways, but you need to be aware of these things. I'm going to talk to you about the changing role of the hotel website. I'm going to explain the new rules of digital visibility with our sort of handy framework. And if you've never done anything in terms of thought about, maximizing visibility through AI search, or indeed perhaps you've started, but you're not sure if it's working, I'm going to give you a roadmap, a 90-day roadmap on the things that you need to do to start with and where I would prioritize. And then just to finish, I'm going to give you a sense of where we're heading over the next 2 or 3 years. Frankly, from 3 years onwards, I think it's anyone's guess, given how fast things are moving. But it will kind of give you a sense of where we're heading and what we need to be doing with our marketing efforts. So let's get right into it. Your customers are finding you in very, very different ways. They just don't search like they used to. And to explain this, I think we need to go back to the good old days when search was simple and traffic was easy, where page 1 of Google was where the majority of discovery happened. To get access to that page 1, you had to invest in SEO over time, or of course you could just pay for ads through Google AdWords, as it was then known, or search ads. And of course it was a simpler time where generally if you got more presence on that page 1, you would get more impressions, you would get more clicks, and you would get more bookings. Problem is that search is now much, much more complex, and AI has disrupted it, but also, Google itself, in the most traditional of sort of uses, is very different for every customer. So when I search for something, I see something very different to what you see based on a whole number of contextual factors, like not least of all my previous browsing behavior as opposed to what you searched in the past. We now are being encouraged by Google itself to use much more highly specific prompts. So rather than sort of using sort of broad keywords like hotels in London, for example, and Google, to be fair, is losing its monopoly on search. It still has a significant market share of the total search on the internet, but it is losing that monopoly, and traffic, unfortunately, is becoming much harder to come by. And to give you a sense of just how difficult things have become in terms of driving that high intent traffic, we are now seeing 50% of all Google searches now feature these AI overviews. So an AI overview, it used to be called Search Generative Experience. It was basically sort of Google's version of ChatGPT, or competitor, if you like, to ChatGPT. It allowed you to interact and get sort of that AI sense of what, or AI response to whatever it is that you asked. And this is significant because whenever one of those appears, 61% fewer clicks actually happen. And that is resulting into the big stat, which I think affects every business. 60% of all searches now on Google are now 0 click. So as it suggests, when somebody makes a search, they either do nothing or they go further and deeper into Google's network rather than click away from Google onto a third-party website. The big reason for this is probably a bit small on my screen there, but it says dive deeper in AI mode. And AI mode, again, is another version of AI integration within the traditional search engine result page. And of course, you can go further and say, oh, that hotel looks nice. Tell me more about that one. So that's changing things. The problem with traditional search and why we're seeing such quick pace, or one of the reasons why we're seeing such quick pace, particularly with customers looking for hotels, is whenever you make a search, it looks something like this. Like I did with this particular search, where I asked for find me a hotel in York with a rooftop, and it came up with 28 different options for a variety of ads, AI overviews, hotel pack, organic spots, more hotel pack, more ads. People also search for. And that would be great. Well, it's not great at all, to be honest. It's completely it bamboozles the customer, but it's great the amount of choice that you get. However, when you dive deeper, excuse me, when you dive deeper on ChatGPT, you learn that actually there are only 3 hotels in York with a rooftop. So you can sort of see how, unfortunately, Google's become so cluttered that it's sort of not really fit for purpose. And that's why ChatGPT and the likes and the sort of AI search platforms, they give us much more relevant answers based around what we search. So my first simple key takeaway is this: search behavior has changed more in the last 18 months than in the previous 18 years. So how we prioritize our marketing must also change. So let's look at the last 90 days, the really sort of the first sort of few months of 2026, and the AI developments specifically that are affecting your hotel. Well, let's look first of all at how AI search has grown, looking obviously at the major platform, ChatGPT. So about 18 months ago, 19 months ago, something like that, in August 2024, there were 200 million weekly active users. And that has grown to February to 900 million. So you can see that huge, big jump. And then I asked it to forecast where we're going to be in the next 2 to 3 years. And obviously take that with a pinch of salt, because we've asked it whether it is going to continue growing at that pace. But what is interesting is, I think, this graph. It gives us a sense of just exactly how things will change over the next 2 years. This is a piece of research done by SEMrush, but it is also backed up by McKinsey & Company and Gartner. They are all broadly suggesting the same thing, which is this: by early 2028, we will hit that crossroads when AI search will effectively surpass traditional search in the volume of searches made, especially when it comes to more commercial related searches. So that gives us less than 2 years. If that graph is exact, we're looking at probably January, February by the time that actually comes to pass. So we've got less than 2 years before AI search really takes over in terms of how customers are finding and choosing their hotels. Excuse me. The next one we have, the next big change, is OpenAI. So OpenAI obviously created ChatGPT. They own it. They changed their stance on booking. What do I mean by that? Well, ChatGPT has shifted, God, that's a tongue twister, from fully integrated to a hand-off model. What does that mean? Well, what they started doing at the start of the year, was they ran an experiment called instant checkout, which allowed users, a certain sample of users, to be able to interact with the ChatGPT platform as we all have become accustomed to, but it also allowed them to complete their purchase. And it didn't really work. They've realized that being the world's best recommendation engine is a better business than trying to be the world's biggest shopping cart. So they've run their experiment. They've decided, no, we are getting inundated with customer issues and we don't want to be handling this. We're going to hand off to vendors to be able to complete their purchase. This is really important because historically, well, I say historically, it's a long time in the grand scheme of things in AI, but over the last year, let's say, we were all expecting that purchase to be completed in ChatGPT through, like you can see on the screen, the booking.com apps and many others. But now they're actively driving people to websites, which is great, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. The March 2026 core update. Now, this is a search algorithm update. You don't necessarily need to know the full details, but I've got 3 key points that affect hotels. These are quite commonplace. There's 2 or 3 a year, and they always tend to happen around March and July sort of time. And there's other sort of updates dotted throughout the course of the year. So nothing new in terms of we were expecting this, but we never really know what's going to happen. So the first thing is this, relatively good. Google Business Profile is now becoming your front page. Why? Hotels that upload fresh content and respond to reviews within 24 hours will start to get a visibility boost. So Google wants you to use your business profile as a means of sort of engaging with your customers, staying active, producing fresh content, and that will give you a bit of a visibility boost. So a relatively quick win to do there. Unfortunately, OTAs have been prioritized over independent hotels. Why? Because the aggregators of our industry are deemed to be more helpful, especially when very sort of broad searches are made, which objectively you can't argue with. It's frustrating though, because we're all trying really hard to reduce the reliance on OTAs, or most of us in this industry. And inevitably, especially at a time when costs are rising quite exorbitantly, that's a real kick in the teeth. But there is some other good news. Google is rewarding sites that have clear snippet-friendly FAQs and structured booking data. So what do I mean by this and why? More prominence, when you do this stuff, you'll have more prominence when branded searches are made. What is snippet-friendly FAQs? I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. So we're going to pass over that, and structured booking data. I'll explain all of those things as we go through. So key takeaway from early 2028, more customers will find you via AI search than traditional search. So let's move on to the changing role of the hotel website. So guests are arriving on your website much closer to a purchase decision than ever before. To explain this, we have to go back and distill digital marketing to its most basic form. There are 2 roles of digital marketing, or at least certainly before AI came along. Number 1, build digital assets that inform, entice, and convert. Pretty simple. We design our websites, we curate our social media feeds, and we optimize our aggregator listings. All makes sense. The second role in digital marketing, certainly before AI came along, was simply to drive visibility and traffic to those assets. So we do that through organic. We can do search engine optimization to get presence on page 1 of Google, or of course we can grow our social following. Or we can pay for things. So we can run ads, search and meta search ads, display ads, social ads. And generally speaking, you invest in one and you pay for the other. And a good strategy is generally considered to have both parts of those. Why things are changing quite so much is this. Your most important digital asset, unfortunately, is not the thing that you've worked really hard at designing, like your website, and being highly considered over. So when people are making a branded search or a non-branded search, so branded search being they've searched for you by name, or a non-branded search would be hotels in location, for example, they are increasingly seeing this. This is your AI shadow. It is an asset that is quickly becoming your most important digital asset, and you do not own it. You cannot control it. You can only work to influence it. And this is important because this sits in the middle between the search and the click. And so inevitably, if your AI shadow is not truly representative and favorable of your business, that can be an issue, and it will either serve to encourage traffic to your owned digital assets like your website, or it will dissuade people from going to those assets that you've worked hard to create. So what is an AI shadow? Well, it is an interpretation of your brand. Think of it like your unique selling points, your online reputation, and an impartial critique, all wrapped into one. And it can take many different forms. If we compare this to traditional search, what happens when you search for, luxury hotels in York? You'll see the Grand, fabulous hotel, and you can see that this particular hotel has highly considered page title and meta description, which is the couple of sentences below. What happens when you make a search of a similar nature in AI search is this. This is similar to your meta description, but this hotel did not write it. It is being informed by everything it knows, ChatGPT in this instance, around that particular hotel across the internet. So this is not particularly damning. It's not going to necessarily say anything particularly nasty, and it's not a huge cause of concern. Albeit, again, forgive me for labouring the point, you've worked really hard, no doubt, at creating and being highly considered in how you present yourself in that first impression. You now don't quite have the same control as you used to. So that's the first sort of version. The second version can be a little bit more concerning. What tends to happen, we've seen, is that customers will say, I'm looking for hotels in this area with these amenities, etc. And they'll say, oh, that one looks nice. Tell me more. Or like I've done in the screen, I don't know if you can see it if it's big enough. What are the pros and cons of staying at this hotel? And inevitably, you get this sort of very highly considered list of positives and negative. And the cons start to come out. So in this instance, spa access fees, potential for noise, service inconsistencies. And it is pulling all of these cons from across the internet, predominantly in this instance, I would suggest, from online reviews. Now, this, you might argue, this is nothing new. This stuff is on the internet. TripAdvisor, aired all of this 20 years ago. The problem is that at which point do people see this in the journey? Because most people are starting their search on a traditional or an AI search engine or a traditional search engine, and then they're starting to see this stuff right at the start of their awareness of your product. And so this stuff here is quickly becoming the gatekeeper content. It serves to either send traffic your way, or actually, no, I think I'm not going to look further into that hotel. I'm going to choose another one. So it's really important to know this stuff. So why is this so important? Why am I making such a big song and dance about it? Because, as I've sort of hopefully explained, it is the new first impression of your brand. The digital assets that we have built, curated and optimized are only seen if the customer goes beyond the AI shadow. And how your business is described across the entirety of the internet matters more than where you rank or how nice your website looks. And that is a big first in digital marketing. And to draw this example, again, forgive me if the screen's a little bit small, but when I was in Athens not so long ago, I said, right, find me to ChatGPT. I said, find me the best moussaka in Athens. And it came up with this fabulous restaurant, Leondi, traditional Greek restaurant, highly rated, wonderful, glowing AI shadow. But importantly, the first instance I'm having, or the first impression I'm having of this particular restaurant, are two images from TripAdvisor reviews that don't particularly, are not well lit. The moussaka, I would say, doesn't look particularly appealing. Whereas you can see the other image, I don't know if you can see my little mouse here, this one here is obviously beautifully shot and highly considered, but that's only a small part of what I'm seeing in that first impression. So all of those things that we've worked hard to create are not necessarily serving us like they used to in terms of those digital assets. So what does this mean for the hotel website that we've worked so hard and invested in, and got it just as we want? Well, last year in 2025, what would happen is simply this: if we utilize the marketing funnel model, where anybody buying anything in theory goes through these 5 stages of awareness, interest, consideration, intent, and purchase. And so if we look at these these 5 stages. In traditional search, we don't have much to go on before going to the website. We just simply are aware of the hotel. Traditional search gives us very little information before we visit a website. And so inevitably, all we do is we skim read that and we click. We're somewhere between awareness and interest, and therefore the role of the website in this instance is to take us all the way through from that initial interest all the way through to purchase. And of course, we might come and go on that website. We're not necessarily going to do it all in one sitting, but that's the general move. This year, with AI search being what it is and growing in the way that it is, the website has a reduced role. So AI search moves us much further down this funnel before we visit. And why? Because we can say, okay, tell me more. Tell me about the pros and cons. Oh, does it have this particular amenity? Is it close to this particular attraction? We can get all of that information directly at our fingertips and within nanoseconds. So why would we need to go to the website? So we sort of find out enough. This is where your AI shadow comes into play. And then we go to the website. So effectively, what's happening here is the volume of traffic is reducing, but in theory, the conversion rate is going up because they're coming at an increased likelihood of conversion. And where are we going next year? Well, I think, unfortunately, this trend is suggesting that the role of the hotel website is reducing even further. Guests will regularly develop the intent to purchase within AI search before being handed off, as ChatGPT describes it, to a website to complete their transaction. And so again, using the hotel example that we've used throughout, you can see when you enable the booking.com app within the ChatGPT interface, you can send them straight off to booking.com. As an aside, there are direct booking apps that have been approved. The Hotels Network is one, which is certainly worth considering. So here's the big thing before I get too sidetracked. AI search then is doing the heavy lifting of converting our customers. That's potentially a problem because we don't own that asset. We don't have as much control as we do with our website and all of our other digital assets. So importantly, what we're going to start seeing, as I've suggested, the traffic we expect will be starting to go down. In theory, the conversion will increase because people are coming at a higher likelihood to convert and purchase. But also, our website needs to serve, I would argue, most importantly, to influence what AI is saying about us. So here's my third key takeaway for today. Your website is no longer the most important digital asset. More potential customers will see your AI shadow than your website, so we must prioritize accordingly. So how are we going to do this? As the name of the title suggests, how do you stand out in digital marketing when AI search is so prominent? Well, we've talked about the two responsibilities of digital marketing: build brand assets that inform, entice, and convert, drive visibility and traffic to those assets. In 2026, I think we've got two more. The first is, number one, get recommended by AI. Go back to that slide about 28 different hotels. Google will actively throw out dozens of hotels at us from a single search. ChatGPT and others will likely throw out 3 or 4. So you want to be one of the 3 or 4 that gets recommended, obviously, if it relates directly to what the customer has searched for. Second thing is we need to influence our AI shadow. And of course, unfortunately, those still responsibilities will remain. We still need to create those brand assets. We still need to drive visibility and traffic to those assets. But unfortunately, our work has increased in terms of maximizing visibility. So how are we going to do this? We're going to do this through what I'd like to call the C.A.R.B.S framework. And a good way to think about this is you should fuel your AI visibility with C.A.R.B.S. So what does it stand for? Customer clarity is the C. AI needs very clear categorization. We should be thinking about who our primary guest types are. Are they business, family, leisure, etc.? We should be thinking about use cases and getting really clear about how our customers are utilizing our hotels, and creating content around there. And it's a really important point here to make. Hotels that describe themselves as all the buzzwords that we've become so accustomed to: luxury, boutique, lifestyle, unique, premium, great location, all these sort of buzzwords, they make us all sound identical to the machine. So it's really, really important that we do everything we can to make ourselves stand out and not sort of blend in to everyone else. So some practical tips. A very simple way of approaching this is to define your hotel in one sentence. This hotel is best for this type of person who wants this type of experience in or near this location. You should be creating content around these use cases, like we've done with some of the examples that we've depicted, and not just adjectives. Say who you are not for. It's a bold statement, but we are not for these types of people. We are best serving these types of guests. And you should be using frequently asked questions to train AI. And I'll talk about that again shortly. Remove any vague or generic wording from your website. So the A stands for authority mentioned. So AI borrows confidence from trusted third parties. So it pays really close attention to press coverage, guide inclusions, list mentions, credible blogs and editorial sites, and recognized industry platforms. So a very simple way of doing this is digital PR. Obviously, the benefit of doing good PR is that you get in front of your customers in an authoritative way, but it also is helping to serve when you get this coverage to inform and give you a big green tick in the eyes of the AI search models. Press releases to trade and regional press is becoming really, really important. It's probably the quickest win that you can do. If you've got something new and relevant to shout about, get it over to the trade press and say, could you, here's a press release. Would you run this? And chances are, if it's worthy enough of publishing, they'll get it out. And you should be amplifying any of these mentions to your blog, Google Business Profile, and social media feeds. Reviews is the R in the C.A.R.B.S framework. AI does not read reviews in the same way that guests do. And it's worth saying that reviews has always been a ranking factor in search engine optimization. But now, strictly speaking, we're talking about generative engine optimization. Reviews carry a little bit more weight than in traditional search. And it's worth noting that a 4.5-star average with one recurring complaint can actually be more damaging than a 4.2-star with consistent praise and well-handled issues. So these unanswered patterns become known weaknesses, and it's worth being aware of. So some very practical tactics. I would suggest don't ask, how did we do? Please leave a review. Ask something more specific. What did you enjoy the most about your stay? Goes a long way. And you should be addressing any recurring issues. So if you know that you've got tired rooms, or you've got a small bunch of unrefurbished rooms, but you have that refurbishment plan booked in for January when you know the hotel is going to be quieter, and you are getting recurring reviews giving you low ratings because the rooms were tired, respond obviously professionally in those reviews, preferably within 24 hours. And also state, yes, thank you. I'm afraid we do have our refurbishment plan. We couldn't plan it in any sooner. It will be planned in January. And repeat this over and over every time it happens. You are obviously informing your customer, but you are also informing the AI search models, and that's going to help you in your visibility. The B stands for brand consistency. So AI cross-checks information across all sort of directory listings. So if your positioning, tone, or facts change, depending on where AI looks, confidence in your business drops. And it's a general, very simple equation. If you've got inconsistencies across not just the main ones like Bing and Google Business Profile and Facebook and TripAdvisor, but everyone, some of these more obscure ones, Around Me, Brown Book, InfoBell, some of these ones that you can just push data at if you've got access to your Google Business Profile. If you've got inconsistency, that creates uncertainty, and uncertainty results in exclusion from these recommendations. So some practical tips. I would be pushing your consistent name, address, and phone number to all 27 directories. I would be writing one core description and reusing it everywhere. I would be auditing your top 5 platforms quarterly. So might be your website, your Google business profile, your booking.com page, your TripAdvisor, your Instagram bio, all of these things, making sure that they are all completely consistent. And finally, the S stands for strengthen machine readability. So if AI can't clearly understand your website, it can't or it won't confidently recommend you. And it's worth stating here that AI doesn't actually read your website. It passes through your website, or it passes your website. So effectively what it's doing is it's sort of a digital way of skim reading what it is that you've got. And a good way of doing that, a good way of having the coding structured in the correct ways will make their job easier. So you can see, you can probably see it's a bit small, but this is an example of schema markup on some of your, and what is known as structured data. So that's something, again, from the March core update, making sure that all of this is correct and structured in the right way. So practical tactics, I would be using schema markup. Again, I'll briefly explain how to go about doing this in the next section. I would be understanding and fixing any technical errors on your website, and I would be training AI with structured FAQs and infrequently asked questions too. And the best way to do this is to ask your front desk receptionist or whoever it is that handles questions from your customers, what are the common questions that are being asked, and are there any that you get asked occasionally? Let's stick those on the website and make sure that they're structured in a way that can be easily picked up by AI search engines. Key takeaway number 4, getting recommended by AI and influencing what AI says about you will grow rapidly in importance. And there, again, is the C.A.R.B.S framework. Fuel your AI visibility with C.A.R.B.S. So where do we start? Your 90-day AI visibility roadmap. I've mentioned it a few times. First and foremost, I would be getting FAQs on almost every page. Make sure that every page on your top navigation of your website features an FAQ section, and they should be structured in the correct ways. So they need to have sort of answer capsules, 2 to 3 sentence summaries that address common queries, preferably under 50 words. You need to be, and I think I mentioned this, FAQs on every major page. You need to be using a platform that will allow you to monitor your AI shadow. So track how you're being recommended and monitor for any negative sentiment, and understanding what those cons are, if you like. What is the negative sentiment that is being produced to customers when they're interested in considering your hotel? Structure your website for AI. So we've talked about this. Well, a very simple, sort of very tactical thing is to add an LLMS.txt file. It's a simple file that sits on in the back end of your website. And again, these machines can pick that up, and you making it easy for them, so you're more likely to be recommended. You can also use a tool like Dentsu to add the schema markup. You just got to be, you tell them what it is that you want to do. It creates the code, and the code just needs to be placed in the right places. So if you've got a web developer that you work with, that's probably the easiest way of doing things. And I would be fixing the basic technical issues of your website. So again, technical SEO has been part of SEO for 20 years. But again, in AI search, it carries that little bit more weight. So missing meta descriptions, descriptive alt text to images, XML sitemap. This might not mean anything to you, but these are small, relatively quick fixes that carry a lot more weight. And I like to call these visibility anchors, because they're sort of anchoring you down unbeknownst at times. So where are we going to head in the next 2 to 3 years? Excuse me. Where are we going to start? So it would be remiss of me in this section not to talk about ChatGPT ads. This is already happening in 2026. It's only available in the US, and you can see an image of what these look like from within the chat interface. These are already being tested. They appear within answers, not alongside the link. So you can see that little line there. So there's a bit of a distinction between what is an ad and what is the response. They are clearly labeled, but contextually matched to the question. So they're not going to be completely random. And here's the 2 big points that I want to, why I've raised this. The early pilot is already generating 100 million in annualized revenue in a matter of weeks. It's only available in the US. And as a result, they are projecting, OpenAI, owner of ChatGPT, is projecting 2.5 billion ad revenue in this year alone. And by 2030, that will rise, they expect, to 100 billion in ad revenue. $100 billion taken out of Google and Meta is a lot of money. And so inevitably, the ad market is going to be completely disrupted. And we should all be thinking about this, about how we can utilize these platforms and other platforms as well, because I suspect the ad cost in Meta and Google may well decrease with this sort of dilution of product in the market. So where are we going? A very quick roadmap of where I think we are heading with AI, particularly with AI search. So last year was all about AI being a research buddy. It was very human-led. You would search for something and it would give you pointers and tips and you'd say, okay, great. And then off you go and continue your browsing. This required very similar marketing efforts. It was novelty. It was novel to be utilizing these channels in this way. Where we are now is customers are continually or increasingly starting to use AI as a travel planner. So it's very AI-led, but human approved. And this is where we need to start optimizing for AI shadows, as we've talked about today. Over the next couple of years, we're going to start to see more and more customers utilizing their own autonomous agent. This is AI-led and human approved. And this is simply where the traveler will give the budget to the AI and the AI will select, book and pay on the customer's behalf. Then it starts to get really scary. And the timings could be off here, but I think this is the general direction of travel. Invisible booking, AI to AI commerce. We're marketing to algorithms, not people. My agent is conversing with your hotel's agent. They do the deal, everybody gets informed, and humans haven't touched the process whatsoever. This will require a very different approach to. Who knows how fast that's going to happen, but it's quite a scary concept. So I hope you found today useful. My 5 key takeaways today have simply been this. Search behavior has changed more in the last 18 months than in the previous 18 years. From early 2028, so less than 2 years, more customers will find you via AI search than traditional search. More potential customers will see your AI shadow than your website, so you must prioritize accordingly. We should be fueling our AI visibility with C.A.R.B.S, which is the new framework for customer acquisition. And finally, ChatGPT ads will disrupt the digital advertising market later this year. Be ready to experiment with this channel. To finish, you might be aware that we've launched a new software platform called C.A.R.B.S. It provides one clear score and one prioritized plan. So it sort of demystifies what you should be doing when it comes to driving more visibility in AI search. You can get your free score and plan by using this QR code or just visit scoreplan.ai. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to message me, please do so at adam@thisisformula.com or drop me a note on LinkedIn. Please do feel free to use the QR codes to access the slides. I welcome any questions through those channels, and thank you for listening, and I hope you found it useful. All the best.